Hey guys, DukeWayneLopez here. Today we're going to be covering chapters 35 through 39. It's the last chapters of the book. The first one's going to be chapter 35. It's basically covering patients with special challenges. So that's anything from bariatric to people with advanced medical care at home who have nurses or a family is taking care of them. And it even covers people with like autism, things like that, any kind of special needs. So this chapter here, is the only one that I honestly like really studied hard for, just because it was different from the other chapters. The chapters that follow after this one, they're just kind of tying everything together for you. At least that's how it was for me. Um, with this here, it teaches you different ways on how to move patients, things like that, who you can ask about the advanced medical care. Uh, it's teaching you different ways of approaches for your assessments and whatnot, basically. Okay, so this chapter here is going to start with homelessness. So you're going to have homeless people, stuff like that. So you got to worry about different diseases that they may have. So you're going to have to practice your PPE with them. There's a way that you have to speak to them. You're not going to just make assumptions that they're drunk or anything like that, because it could always be diabetes, stuff like that. Stuff that they can't manage themselves because they don't have the funding for it. Uh, this is also where you have to stay humble, where I keep saying throughout all my videos, always stay humble. Uh, don't hold yourself at a higher level than them. Bring yourself down to their level. Speak to them like a normal human being. Everybody's human. You don't know what they go through. You gotta treat them with the utmost respect. Um, from there, you're also going to be studying obese patients, so bariatrics. They're going to go a little bit more into detail about how you treat them, what you have to worry about when you're transporting them, stuff like that. What position to have them in the ambulance. You always have to be worried about their respiration, because with that mass, it can affect the way that their chest rises, falls, how their diaphragm works, stuff like that. So you always have to worry about dropping stuff. So you always have to worry about, are they able to breathe properly without having rough breaths or anything like that. From there, you're going to go to autism. With autism, they're going to teach you how to approach a patient, how to speak to them, uh, pretty much retraining the whole way that you work with the patient is what this whole section of the chapter is going to be about. Autism, you have to be real careful with the line of questioning that you use. You have to be careful with what may trigger an episode with them. So if they're triggered by cops, say they saw negative things with cops, maybe the parents get into altercations because of it, and the cops always come and they separate the parents, stuff like that. They may turn into thinking, okay, the cops always take away my family, they're bad people. So first thing that you have to ask them is, what can trigger an episode with them? Know how to phrase it for them. I still haven't come up with my own little phrase yet, but most likely I'll just say episodes. But always be aware of that. So some people don't like you touching them, so just know what triggers them. You always have to speak in a calm voice with them. Never pressure them to answer any questions, but you also have to change the way that you ask questions as well, because they're not going to understand fully what you would question a normal person. The next chapter is going to be about advanced home care. So you're going to have different devices, things like that, that people are going to be hooked up to. So with these devices, you have to know how they function. Well, you're not going to have to know how they function, but you have to know what their function is. You're not going to be a professional at every single device that's out there. So whenever you go to one of these homes, whether it's the patient or it's one of the nurses or family members that's taking care of them, uh, if there's a problem with the machine, always ask them, has this happened in the past, and how did we correct the problem? So then you can go through the steps, see if you can correct it. If not, then you have to take a step from there and figure out what you're going to do with the patient, how you're going to transport them. So with this here, it's also going to be covering catheters, stuff like that, how to transport people with those. Say somebody's on oxygen, so COPD, something like that, where they need the constant oxygen. When you transported them, how are you going to transport them? Are you going to keep them on oxygen, which most likely is yes, and how are you going to keep them on oxygen for this trip? In this chapter also you're going to cover congenital and acquired disease. So these right here are just two different forms of disease. It's not talking about disease in general, it's just talking about congenital, which is genetic, where you're born with it, or acquired, where later in life, 5, 10, 15, however long it takes, you get that disease. So that there, it's important to know for your tests as well, and it will be on tests. With this is real basic, just understanding what the differences are is really what you need. They may give you a few examples of acquired and congenital diseases, so remember those as well. Home ventilators, cardiac devices, left ventricle assist devices, catheter IVs, and abuse and neglect. So you're going to be moving from all these advanced medical devices and everything over to neglect and abuse. Everybody knows that with special challenge patients, there's always a chance of having abuse of the patient, any kind of neglect, stuff like that. It may not always be intentional. It could be just a family situation. Maybe the family member is not knowledgeable enough. Maybe they don't have the means themselves to actually be able to take care of their family member. And that's when we have to be an advocate for a patient. So when you drop them off at the hospital, you say, hey, the house was a mess. I think that everything's being done that they can provide for themselves, but they need that extra assistance. So sometimes the hospital set it up to where when they go back, they're going to be going back to a clean home. You know, they might have VITAS, continuing care nurse at the residence. So that's one thing that my mother do. That's one thing that my mother does, is she does continuous care for a single patient. So any patients that are dying within a year, she goes to those houses and she makes sure that they have a nice, happy life for whatever that time frame may be. So much respect to her. I can't do that. I would get way too emotionally attached. But always be aware of the abuse and neglect. It's not always something that's going to be intentional, but if you do feel like if a child or a special needs person is being abused, know the channels that you have to go through legally so that you can have the process be taken care of. You don't want to have a child that's being abused just not be helped. You don't want a child to be raised that way. So remember that. But that's how the chapter ends, is on that very serious note. So from there we're going to go on to chapter 36. Alright, so chapter 36 is going to be basically talking about how to clean your ambulance, how to maintain it, what to check for, what foods you're supposed to check on it. So there's things that you do and you do not check on it. Some things need to be left to a mechanic, of course. But yeah, it teaches you when you're going to clean your ambulance, which is hopefully after every call you're going to sanitize everything. It tells you about how you're going to be driving with dual guard and everything like that. When to use the sirens, the different ambulance sizes that you're going to have as well. I believe there's 4 different ambulance sizes, and one of them is not, why did I use that? One of them is not registered with the US yet, which I think was level 4. And the only reason why I got that right on the test is because I was thinking, I was like, okay, American Ambulance uses the van, and with the hospital and everything, I've only seen 2 different sizes. I haven't seen the giant one yet, so I was like, let's choose number 4, and I got it right. So yeah, professional, critical thinking skills here. This also goes through when to use your sirens and whatnot, and what the sirens can actually do to the patient and yourself. So they talk about with beginners that are using sirens and stuff that they may tend to speed more. They also say that with certain patients, you don't want to use your sirens because it may speed up their heart rate. So if you have a cardiac patient that's not stabilized yet, you may not want to use your sirens. So from there also it tells you how you're going to transport the patient to the ambulance, and also tells you how to transport the patient to the hospital. So it goes into more details from what you've gone through in the book recently. It's a recap for me, basically, because if you pay attention, you're going to kind of know already what your steps are going to be. But yeah, it re-goes over it. It's going to be the same way for the other chapters as well after this. basically it just gets into more detail about different operations that you're going to be doing throughout the call. So all the way from picking them up to cleaning the truck. Maintenance, cleaning. Oh yeah. The cool part of the chapter is helicopters. And it's not for flying fact, it's for the fact that you can call for an airlift because you're too far away and the patient needs a quick route. So say that you're stuck on, here in freaking Orlando, we have I-4 over here that's horrible with traffic. So imagine that we have a backup to where instead of a 15-minute drive, we have like a 45 to 50-minute drive. We can have an airlift if we have a proper space for it. We can have him airlifted to the hospital so he gets there in 15 minutes instead of an hour. It tells you the different sizes and everything for the amount of space that the helicopter needs. So you need 100 by 100. It tells you all the information that you have to give them, how to approach the helicopter, when to approach the helicopter, and who gives you the signal to actually fall to go to the helicopter. So never just run up to it. There's blades, spinning things that are sharp, and so yeah, remember that. But basically that's all that this chapter is about. So cleaning, transport, what you check on your ambulance before shift, and helicopters. So real basic, simple chapter. It's going to be the same thing for all the other ones. I think the only other interesting chapter, let's see, yep, is the last chapter, EMS Response to Terrorism. But we're not there yet. We're at Hazardous Materials, which is actually kind of cool also, but it's just a recap. So Hazardous Materials is really basic. At least to me it is. You're going to have your response guidebook and everything with you. You already know your protocols when dealing with a hazardous situation, but it's going to go more into depth about the process about it. So how hazmat's going to be, you're going to have a hot, warm, and cold zone, stuff like that. What zones are you allowed into as an EMT, and what your zones are going to be all doing. So it's just going to be teaching that. It's going to teach you where to set up your station at. So of course you don't want to be downhill and downwind of the thing, because all the chemicals or whatever, if the chemicals in the air, it's going to be blowing on you. If it's on the ground and it's a liquid, it's going to be rolling down towards you. So you don't want to have that kind of situation. So you always want to be uphill and upwind of that situation. But it's real basic. The chapter really doesn't have too many confusing areas about it. It teaches you about triage, things like that, different ways to assess. So you're going to be learning about RPM, multiple casualty incidents and stuff like that. They'll probably have a couple of videos for you guys as well to show how the firefighters do it before ambulances and everybody else kind of arrives. This is also where you start doing labs on it as well. You're going to have a lab about how, myself, I was in control of the entire casualty incident. So I had to tell them the resources that I needed. I had to list the local hospitals for Orlando that were for trauma. I had to list what I wanted each group to do. So pretty much I was prioritizing everybody so that I could use them most effectively. And I had two other people, so one was below me and then one was below him. And they all had their own separate jobs, and we were all just trying to get everything moving slowly so we could start triaging and figure out what was going on with everybody and how fast we could get everybody out, and how effectively we can do it. So they didn't throw anything crazy at us. I think ours was a school shooting, and the shooter was already arrested and stuff, so we had cops that already blockaded it, so I didn't have to worry about the scene safety too much. They already gave the all clear, and the dude was arrested and taken to jail. So pretty much I think what they did was that they separated the class. So we had 3 people, so it was me and 2 other people, and then everybody else was a patient. And they just gave them cards, and we did this little game and stuff. It was real simple, but it gave us the perspective of pretty much how it all kind of works roughly, so that if we ever get into a situation with that, kind of like 9/11, Boston bombing, stuff like that, we know how to go about it. So it also helps you realize why, like with the Boston bombing, people were complaining on the news about, oh, the ambulances are like a few blocks down, they're not coming in, they need to come over and start helping people. And that's because they don't understand how the protocol is. They have to have a staging zone so that when they come in, everything's going to be safe for them, because you don't want to be going into the zone hot and then have another bomb go off or something like that, you know? You don't want to get injured and become a patient yourself. You want to help the patients. So there's always protocols that you have to follow. When you go through all the different steps and everything of the protocols that you have to go through with triage and how to transport the patient, stuff like that, it's going to go into the psychological effects. So this is kind of recapping from really early on in the book, which is having group sessions with your peers and everything, where you guys can just go out and talk and relieve stress, you know. Uh, there is chances of people when they're in those mass casualty incidents, they're going to get tunnel vision, and uh, they may become too distraught to perform their duties anymore, so they will become a patient themselves. So then we have to transport them to the hospital, and they cannot come back to the scene at all. They're not allowed to. You can get PTSD from this kind of stuff because you're going to see some gnarly stuff from mass casualty incidents. Uh, and they are happening more frequently now too, sadly. So there has to be huge communication between you, the hospital, with everybody that you're working with to make sure that everything is running perfectly fine for these MCIs. The chapter doesn't go into much else as far as MCIs and everything like that. It's a real small chapter. I think it was only like 20 pages, something like that. And that's front and back. So, and then some of it also was just showing the slips to where it has morgue, yellow, red, green, stuff like that. So it's all pretty simple. Like I said, it's a recap. But for the next chapter, let's see. Oh my gosh. Yes. Highway safety. Oh my goodness. So for the next chapter, it's highway safety and vehicle extrication. This chapter isn't anything difficult, but it's cool because you learn how to cut roofs off of cars and stuff, which I think is more of a firefighter thing. I don't think that we have those tools on us, but it would be awesome if we did. I got this little, there we go. I had the little Fonzie thing going on or whatever from Happy Days. So this chapter here is going to be having to do with how you're going to approach the scene, how you're going to block off and make a safe zone for yourself. We already know about safe zones. We know about the distances by now. At least I hope that everybody does, because it's very important to know. You got to know what angles to park your vehicle at, where to stage at, stuff like that. For any kind of incident, you got to know where you're going to stage the ambulance so that you can get ambulance on and off scene safely without affecting anybody else. You got to know how to block traffic so that traffic isn't going to get congested, how it's going to be able to still hopefully move, unless the accident that you're approaching on kind of takes up all the lanes. You just got to know how to set everything up so that everything runs perfectly, so you can get on and off the scene, minimal damage to all bystanders and everything. You're also going to go into pretty much how the cars are when you're having to chop off the roof, stuff like that. So you got to know your A pillar, B pillar, C pillar, or if they have more pillars, you got to know what they are, where they are. We had a few people in the class that didn't know what they were, and I was kind of like, how do you not know? But I'm kind of a car guy, so I guess it's something that not everybody knows. Another thing that you have to know is what type of glass that they use on the side windows, the front window, and the back window. So the front window is going to be laminated. I think that's the one where you have pretty much glass, plastic glass, something like that. Or it might be reverse, it might be plastic glass, plastic. Hold on. What was it? Say good and patient, spectators. Come on, just give me glass, man. Stabilize on vehicles. Yeah. Alright, I just looked it up, and yes, I was right the first time. It's glass, plastic, glass. Sorry about that. But, at least I got that information right still. So, it's also going to go through the different types of glass that's going to be on the car for front, back windshields, side windows, stuff like that. So, you're going to have laminated glass on the windshield, which is going to be glass, plastic glass, and it's all going to be pressed. And that keeps it from, like, truly shattering. Side windows are the ones where they'll break, and they'll break into like little balls. They might still be sharp, but it's more safe. It's also going to teach you how to stabilize the car. So say that you have a car that ran off the road, you got to know how to stabilize it, how to deflate the tires, how to have it on the FedEx. Sorry, I got distracted. There's a window over here. I see traffic, and yeah. But it teaches you how to stabilize the vehicle and blocks and everything like that, so that when you're moving the patient out, the car doesn't just start rolling downhill or something. That'd be pretty bad. Uh, it teaches you uh, about cars that are flipped on their side, flipped on their top, stuff like that, how to extricate patients. Uh, it also goes back to mechanisms of injury, stuff like that, things that you have to worry about. It goes to the KED, how to remove them from the vehicle with the KEDs, short, long boards, things like that. So it's all real basic, going back over things that you've already learned. But it's a pretty good chapter since it goes into more detail about fires, things like that also. Teaches you about the ABC fire extinguisher, how to put out an engine fire, and if you should put out the engine fire. There's different circumstances and whatnot. But it just goes into finer detail. Nothing too special about the chapter other than how to stabilize a vehicle and how to get the patient out. So not too much about it. I just scared my dog. But oh man, yeah, that's pretty much it with this chapter here. There's not too much to it as well. Like I said, all these chapters are just going to be recapping and then adding a little bit more detail to what you've already learned. So it's all going to be pretty simple. The last two chapters, one of them I got a 96 on, the other one I got like a 88. Then we had extra credit for the one that had 96 on, and I got 100% because of that. So the last chapter is going to be about terrorism. It's going to be about domestic and international. Unfortunately, it's a big thing nowadays, talking about terrorism, so it is in the book. It's going to tell you the different types that you have to worry about, so anything from chemical, nuclear, whatever, biological. It goes through all the different types and explains how we deal with each one of them. It also goes back to the vaccine as well that we have for ourselves to protect against different chemicals, things like that. It covers different terrorist attacks that went through. So my book specifically brought up 9/11 and the Boston bombing. It brought up different operations that we go through with that, what to look out for. It teaches us how to defend ourselves against different attacks, basically. So biological, chemical, everything like that. We got to know the mask, the PPE, stuff like that we have to use. We got to understand the symptoms. We got to understand how it affects the body and things like that. So it's a very serious chapter. I think this is one of the few chapters to where everybody was pretty serious about it. But that's what this chapter is going to be all about. It goes through biological and everything. It tells you, I'm flipping through the pages right now, and it is all just different types of chemicals and stuff. It literally goes through so many chemicals, ricin, what's this? So we got the plague, Q fever, tularemia, botulinum. There's ricin again. They get pretty hard to pronounce, so I'm not even going to try and pronounce all of them, but it even goes through viruses, things like that. So viruses that people can weaponize, they put that in here as well. So it's just a very serious subject. I don't remember having too much of that in the test book, but it's still something that you have to know. So take that chapter real seriously. That's going to be something that, God forbid, we might be able to see one day and save some lives. But that's where the book leaves you off at, is with terrorism. This chapter, one thing that they really try and beat into your head is just for your safety. So that's the biggest concern, is safety for EMTs, paramedics, any kind of first responder. You have to worry about your safety in this situation, because once again, same thing that they say in all the other chapters pertaining to this, is if you get injured, then you become a patient. You can't help people anymore. So you have to make sure that you are always able to maintain that safe barrier around yourself. Don't put yourself into situations where you might possibly get injured to where you can't help people anymore. But that's where the chapter leaves off. That's the last chapter in the book. It's not too long either. It's probably the same amount of pages as the last one, about 20 pages. So nothing too special, but that is the entirety of this. So all that I just went over. I might do another video. Sorry, dog, I keep bothering you. I'm sorry. She's trying to sleep and I keep waking her up. But I might go more into detail about certain things on here because I think it'll help me out as well for when I start trying to do my state and NR EMT exams. Most likely what I'll focus on is going to be organs, diseases, stuff like that. I'll try and make videos on that possibly and see about trying to use that as my own study reference as well. But that's going to do it for this video here. The book is finished. So the next videos are going to be about labs, things like that. So I will see you guys next time. Leave a like, comment below. I hope that this video wasn't too randomized. I was kind of everywhere. I've been suffering from migraines a lot, so exhaustion is real. At this point, I have probably a migraine every other day, and the migraines are crazy. They last for like an hour. I think it's from an old car accident, so I got to go to physical therapy and see about getting some work jobs done on my neck. But let me know how you guys like this video. Let me know any questions, anything like that about these chapters. Like I said, only one chapter was really something new. The rest were all just going back over and giving a little bit more detail, just like how other chapters were in this book. But yeah, leave a like, comment, subscribe if you like. And yeah, I will see you guys next time.